All right, so we had to talk about this because everybody is like, what the hell's going on? And the reason I want to talk about this is because we shouldn't be talking about this. We shouldn't be paying attention to this scuffle that's happening. So this isn't okay. So AOC has been sort of both siding the issue, criticizing Joe Biden on one end, but then liking Greta Thunberg's both siding status.
Yep.
She hasn't really gone after Nancy Pelosi at all. Nancy Pelosi is somebody that could put out legislation that could really, really push for it. If she's going after Joe Biden, she should also go after Nancy Pelosi. However, my issue with her and the whole squad is the virtue signaling, and I kind of talked about it yesterday, where they are just doing a lot of like, oh, this is bad, but we also pushed you to vote for Joe Biden. We also aren't really holding Nancy Pelosi accountable. And they're still talking about Hamas as this really bad thing that must be condemned. And that is extremely dangerous because it still manufactures consent for what Israel's doing.
Exactly.
And that's kind of like the same thing when Ilhan Omar was talking about the Syrian, like the attack from the United States on Syria, but simultaneously saying Assad is a dictator. Like, you're still manufacturing consent that they did something wrong, that these people are terrorists, that sort of aspect. And we can't do that anymore. You can't continue going down that path.
Mm-hmm.
So she said this to Biden, right? By only stepping in to name Hamas's actions, which are condemnable, in this part right here, and refusing to acknowledge the right of Palestinians, Biden reinforces the false idea that Palestinians instigated the cycle of violence. This is not neutral language. It takes a side, the side of occupation. Okay, so she's right, but she is doing the same thing. This is my problem with her. She's still both siding. We don't have to read that part, but that's exactly what she's doing. So then the AOC starts kind of just focusing on Marjorie Taylor Greene because her whole thing with Marjorie Taylor Greene is like, they're the opposite. She's like the progressive, crazy socialist commie, and Marjorie Taylor Greene is the QAnon, like election rigging believing, like crazy right wing. Yeah. And I mean, a lot of those stereotypes fall true, but a lot of them don't. A lot of them are just exaggerations on both ends. AOC is not a socialist commie at all. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, the reason they hate her so much mostly, I mean, she's low-hanging fruit here. I like people just going after her endlessly. It's like, does she have any power? Not really. They hate her more because of the election shit than anything else, right?
And she's not like the typical establishment Republican. She's more like that Trump-minded, patriot of sorts, all in that movement is what they call themselves. And so she is definitely like a Trumper, not a Republican. And that's why they also hate her. They hate her because of her stances on LGBT and whatnot. Yeah. And it is the low hanging fruit for emotions. But really quickly, fam, don't you feel that sometimes the virtue signaling from AOC, it's not just about sounding good. It's also about sheep herding people on to that side. It actually works because it's an emotional thing.
Of course. And this
has a purpose.
And this isn't saying the things that Marjorie Taylor Greene has said shouldn't be criticized in whatever way. But what I'm saying is there's an exploitation of the situation.
Yes, there is.
By AOC and the Democratic Party and the media. There's the Washington Post. This is Marjorie Taylor Greene aggressively confronts Rep. AOC, causing the New York Congresswoman to raise security concerns. Here she is again. Once again, when it was Twitter violence, she was talking about, hey, go after these people.
Yeah.
When it was the Capitol 6 riot, she was like, you said you wanted to have me killed. She is extremely overdramatic. It really just discredits her all the time because she's like this like drama queen. This girl is just like a constant drama queen, right? And I'm just gonna read a couple of things here from this article. So after Marjorie Taylor Greene accosted her, AOC said that she needed more security. 2 Washington Post reporters apparently witnessed this. She left the House of Chamber. She exited late last Wednesday afternoon. Who was running after with Marjorie Taylor Greene running after her, saying, "Hey, Alexandra, Alexandria twice in an effort to get her attention. When Ocasio-Cortez did not stop walking, Greene picked up her pace and began shouting at her and asking why she supports Antifa. This is, a loosely knit group in the far left activists and Black Lives Matter, falsely labeled them as terrorist groups. Greene also shouted that Ocasio-Cortez was failing to defend her radical socialist beliefs by declining to publicly debate the freshman from Georgia. Again, like, you know, the right doesn't do themselves any favors when they bring up like radical Antifa and all this other crap, and like it's just culture war. It's like watching Cassandra Fairbanks and like some, you know, person that's always posting about white supremacists fight each other. Like this isn't the left. She doesn't represent like the anti-imperialist leftists that could actually explain to you, okay, here are the nuances of BLM, here are the nuances of militias, here's what, like, no, this, and then she comes back with, she's a commie. She's not a commie, or she's not a socialist, she's not a radical anything. That's the problem we have. She's not doing what she was supposed to be doing, and I hate it when the right just continues pushing these stereotypes that are false.
These are the stupid parts.
And the same thing,
Sorry.
She does the same thing. Oh, the QAnoner, the insurrectionist, the
bullshit
same
versus bullshit.
It's just a waste of time. And you know, and Greene said, you don't care about American people, why do you support terrorists? Like this is so stupid. And so then Greene wanted to argue with AOC, and then apparently that she started screaming at her, and the AOC was called a terrorist sympathizer. And so what they basically said after this statement was, we hope leadership and the Sergeant of Arms will take real steps to make Congress a safe civil place for all members and staff, especially as many offices are discussing reopening. One member has already been forced to reallocate her office due to Congresswoman Greene's attacks, and that was Cori Bush. Cori Bush relocated because apparently she felt threatened by Greene.
Oh, please.
And and so this is the part that I wanted to read from Marjorie Taylor Greene. She said she's a chicken. She doesn't want to debate the Green New Deal. She said to a small group of reporters and onlookers near the entrance to the chamber, "These members are cowards. They need to defend their legislation to the people. That's pathetic." And then Greene, of course, is a Donald Trump supporter, like Pasta said. So the people, a lot of people don't like her, like you said, on the Republican end. They feel like she's too distracting.
The establishment don't like her. Yeah, she doesn't get in line.
Pasta, but I feel like she's still establishment. I feel like she's still establishment. As long as you take that money, as long as you're peddling the same culture war bullshit, I still feel like you're establishment. You're just kind of like less uncouth. You know how Trump was like very blunt about how he did things? I feel like she's like him in that way. Like, she's very blunt. I still feel like they're establishment. I mean, to say they're not establishment is kind of like...
Well, I don't think they're like buddies with the Mitch McConnells and the Lindsey Grahams. I don't think she's like inside top of that group yet. You know what I'm saying?
No,
like,
I mean, I mean, they're not.
I think Liz Cheney is more like, tied to the military-industrial complex and that whatnot. Whereas if she's one of those kind of like, I don't want to say populist right, because I don't think it's. I'd say Trumper is sort of. It's a different brand to me.
I think
once
there's
again,
different
the
layers,
money
right? On the right, because there's just like there is on the left. There's different people that don't get along on the right. Like, we can't say they're a monolith, but
in this situation, fam, I just want to say this much: at the end of the day, AOC is going to lose because she is avoiding conversation. She's acting like words or violence and stuff. Yeah. And if she had any guff, she'd stand there and debate Marjorie Taylor. We would assume that when AOC got into office, that if she had the opportunity to debate a person like Marjorie Taylor Greene, she would do it. She would take it, and she would eat her up and chew her out.
Exactly.
But she can't because she's such a fake. Of course, you'd say, "Oh, you want to debate? Let's go," and you would chew her up and spit her out. But then again, you'd be true to your words and whatnot. This whole tactic, and we witnessed this.
Because they can't defend it. They can't defend this. Because if we want to talk about the Green New Deal, it's bullshit.
Yes.
Like, the Green New Deal as is bullshit. We've talked about this endless times. I talked about it at the Kenosha event, like, that I was at. Like, I'm not like the Green. We need something better than the Green New Deal. So you like, she could easily like chew her up and be like, yeah, the Green New Deal isn't better, blah blah blah. It isn't good enough. Here's what I would do to work with to find a solution, blah blah blah. But she won't do that because she can't defend it, because she is just a PR narrative manager.
Well, with that being said, so what becomes the tactic, right? You can't defend your positions. You get a microphone in the mainstream media to put out your propaganda, and then when you have to face somebody, and this is something we've all witnessed from when Jonny first came to the Convo Couch. Remember the whole thing with Jimmy Gomez? What does he do? He avoids a debate. It's just him and Kenneth Mejia now. It's after the jungle primary. It's the two of them. They avoid. Now AOC, Nancy Pelosi hasn't debated anybody since Christ left Chicago. I mean, that's their whole tactic. And the reason why their tactic is that way is because Democrats can't stand behind their policies. Therefore, all they can do is get in a microphone, virtue signal, sheep herd over the people who have their emotions on their sleeves, and then avoid any type of media that's going to get in their face. It's going to avoid any type of opponent that's going to get in their face. And at the end of the day, the independents out there, they're going to see this shit and say, AOC's a chicken. Why won't she stand up for her positions? And this whole, oh my God, Cori Bush has got to move. AOC's got to move because they feel threatened. Get out of here. You're not fooling anybody. Well, no, you are fooling somebody, but not enough people to move the masses. You just become
like an attention-seeking victim mentality, and they're not victims, dude. They're
not.
The working class in America are victims right now.
Go.
The Palestinians are fucking victims. This is distracting from all of that, and of course, like I said, it's the culture war thing. Marjorie Taylor Greene has a part to play too, but again, it's just kind of exposing AOC more than Marjorie Taylor Greene. You don't see us doing videos of her. Because she is low-hanging fruit. Like, what am I going to say? She isn't really, have any power. She doesn't have any power. AOC is one of the most powerful congresswomen because of who she is and her brand. So she said, AOC, AOC's afraid of debating with her about the socialist Green New Deal. There we are again. The Green New Deal is anything but socialist. It's a global capitalist type of thing. AOC is a fraud and a hypocrite.
Ooh.
That's fine, Sandy. Since you lack the courage and intelligence to debate me, I'll debate a person who really wrote it. So that's what's going on with them.
Mm.
And here are a couple things, right? A couple sentiments from it's already up there.
Yeah.
From the people, because Gay Unemployed Waiter said, Democrats are using Rep. Ocasio-Cortez to suck out all the oxygen and keep you busy while they do nothing except tweet. And that's exactly what's happening, guys. That's exactly what is going on. Meanwhile, Joe Biden, and this, I put it in this section because AOC is pretty much running narrative management for the Democratic Party.
Mm-hmm.
And here's old Joe. Let's see what he had to say on his brand of Zionism.
We look at the Middle East. Think about time. If we look at the Middle East, I think it's about time we stop, those of us who support, as most of us do, Israel in this body, for apologizing for our support for Israel. There's no apology to be made. None. It is the best $3 billion investment we make. Were there not an Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interest in the region. The United States would have to go out and invent an Israel. If we look at...
What do you make of that? The United States, if we didn't have Israel, if we didn't pretty much help Israel, that didn't exist. It didn't exist. Pretty much occupy and expel the colonized people, the oppressed people, the Palestinians, the indigenous population of the area. We would have to invent an Israel. What?
Yeah.
What do you think he means by that foreign policy?
It means that we would have to find a place for the people of Jewish religion, since they, once again, the Holocaust stuff, we'd have to provide them a place and invent it for them to be safe and whatnot. I think everything has to stem. They've always used, the reason why we did this here and we, pretty much took away land from the Palestinians, we had to give Jewish people a state for reparations for the Holocaust. So no matter what, he says that the world would kind of owe them that to be able to have that state. That's what I took.
I took it as if we didn't have an Israel, the United States would have to invent an Israel, because if you look at it geographically, we have without Israel there, we wouldn't have control of the Middle East. Like, Israel is like our partner in crime in getting control of the Middle East. So I feel like, yes, that's what people would take it as. But really, underneath, it's about the resource extraction. It's about accumulation of power and influence in the Middle East. Because if you look at who's really controls the Middle East, unfortunately, it's Israel and Saudi Arabia. And those are our two biggest allies. So if we didn't have a powerful state like Israel with their military, that if you decide not to join the military, you get you go to jail. Like, you get so much crap because there are people that are trying to fight against the IDF and against the military industrial complex in Israel, which is obviously directly tied to ours, and they get it's so hard to do that. Like, you have to escape to America, you have to do all these things, so that's how it's set up. So I think in that sense too, I think they would invent some sort of other military power.
I see what you're
control.
saying. Geographically, we would have to invent something so we have a presence in that area to do what we got to do. I hear you. I look at it as more like, well, we owe them, is what he was saying. Like, we owe it to them. We owe it to society after the Holocaust to make sure that Israel has a state, that they have the right to exist. And once again, that argument is okay, but how do you do it? How do you go about it? Do you just take land away from somebody else? Do you let the same practices that were once thrusted upon Jewish people during World War II on the Palestinians now and don't say anything? And it's the modern era, so it's a lot different right now. Rockets and missiles, they be killing people on a regular basis. The weaponry we have now, since we split that atom, and since the technological boom, I mean, it's disgusting what we can do. And it's disgusting what's happening, and we can no longer turn a blind eye. We have to find a way. If you're one of those people who well, I want to deal with stuff in modern society today. I don't want to talk about what happened thousands of years ago and what's going on now. Well, how do we deal with it today? What do we do tomorrow to stop the killing of Palestinians, to stop the oppression of Palestinians? There are more Palestinians, I think, in Jordan, you know what I'm saying, and spread out through these areas because they were thrown away from their homes. I mean, so we have to figure something out. We can't just sit back here.
And the United States isn't in control of what, that's the thing. A lot of Israelis were fine the way they were. It's like, I don't know, dude. It's an ethnic group. It's not everybody that's an ethnic group has a land or a country. This was facilitated by the United States. Really, at this point, people aren't really arguing that Israel has the right to exist, but at the same time is really they weren't a nation state. They were just a people. So President Biden also said, as the holy month of Ramadan comes to an end, Jill and I send our warmest greetings to all those celebrating Eid. May you be well throughout the year. Eid Mubarak. So there he is, trolling, right? Trolling. He's sending his warmest welcome for the happiest holy month of Ramadan, and at the same time, he is condemning what's happening to Israel, and he's painting Palestinians as the guilty party, and that to me is one of the most hypocritical things you could fucking do, because honestly, it's more than gaslighting now. It's almost like they're trolling us. It's almost like they're trolling people.
It's just a giant virtue signal. It's up right there. It's a giant virtue signal too, as well. And really, to tell you the truth, this is the problem we have. A lot of people don't go into the dive of the nuances of politics. They're working two jobs. They're consumed.
Yeah.
Some people are consumed with some form of bullshit entertainment or whatever the case may be. It's an attack 100%. So they throw these sound bites out there and it's oh, Joe's wishing a bunch of Muslim people happy lives and a happy holiday. That's beautiful. Meanwhile, they don't look at the whole thing of him what you put up and talking about we'd have to create Israel when he goes I'm a Zionist, when he said before too as well, and he's actually he's okay with people who are trying to celebrate Ramadan getting bombed by cluster bombs. I mean, that's just, it's bullshit. We see the bullshit. We've seen the bullshit in AOC and the squad now because it's easy to read, but people don't believe it. They watch mainstream media. They watch a little of it. They read the headlines and they move on. So yeah, he's got a bunch of low-hanging fruit, mentally convinced that he's a good guy. He's a swell guy. That's a bunch of malarkey. He's the blue dog regular guy. He acts like an actual right winger. That's what he acts like. Ocasio-Cortez has a Taco Tuesday with Buttigieg,
So again, here's AOC once again, the media focusing on her like with stupid shit. Do I think it's a big deal that she had Taco Tuesday with Buttigieg? No, but it's just funny because Buttigieg has ties to CIA, and now there are rumors that she has ties to CIA. I really don't want to get into that very much, but I just wanted to to put that out there because it's like I don't know, like anything she does is like exploited by the media, both on the left and right, like anything she does, and it's like I just feel like she's a giant distraction, just like Marjorie Taylor Greene is a distraction for the left. I think she's a giant distraction for the right, and for anybody that, like, for all her obsessive fans to come up defend her. If anybody says something, I made a joke like 2 CIA assets walk into a taco shop in DC. Like, it's just like, but that happens all the time in DC, right? Like, it just happens all the time.
I think she's almost like working in conjunction with them. Like,
well,
okay, you're going to go for Taco Tuesday. We'll have the camera there.
Yeah,
with
maybe
PDB,
yeah,
and we'll get a good op.
Well, that's what actors do in Hollywood. What are politicians at this point? Really,
same thing.
You know what I mean? Like, what is a politician? That's not like an entertainer at this point. Like a PR just front. Like, oh hey, I'm gonna do some publicity stunts, and that's what they do. Like, I mean, it's just bullshit. Like, you don't have to like.
What's with the
dumb.
pictures of
It's
Pete
just so
Buttigieg now with all the food now out there? Ever since he went to, I think he went with Al Franken, right, in Harlem to get chicken or something like that. They've been showing pictures with him eating food all the time.
He's human, fam. He's a human, regular guy.
He's a
Indiana.
regular. I'd like to have a beer with Joe Biden. That's the whole thing they said with with Bush. I'd have a beer with Bush.
Remember the beer with Warren?
Oh my God, yeah, when she opens up here. It was so scripted. It was such bullshit and stuff like that. But that's where we're at. Listen, I'm looking for people. Like I said, I'm looking for candidates, activists to get ahead of this thing, to say the hell with these parties. This two-party illusion no longer is going to fool us and stuff. We got to get outside of it. Yeah. We have to think outside of the electoral process. We have to force these guys to do what we want to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, man, you're going to vote this way. You're going to move this piece of legislation, or we're going to show up in front of your house. Have a clear, decisive plan of what you want them to do and make them do it and hold them accountable at all times. This all theater here is just ridiculous. Want to read some super rays? Johnny, you got anything to say about that? You don't want to go for Taco Tuesday with AOC? No, I don't know.
She's buying.
And I'm surprised we didn't see hard shell tacos in this one. That would have been just.
I always told you that's a white person thing.
Nice crunch. I remember when I first wanted tacos and I saw the commercial. Mom, she got the Taco Viva kit, and I thought that was tacos. Man, when I moved to California, I got a lesson.